how specific would I have to go? Right? Yes, it is. I've just said why I feel, why no feel as a professional, tax professional. I'm making a case that, it's worse than the VAT, which was opposed by this tradition. You know what I mean? Tradition, you know what I mean? All this opposition to VAT since Kumi Preko. And I'm saying that, when Kojo and others are pointing bright, are saying that it's not all Momo that is consumption. That was a point I raised. And I asked, for example, on my Twitter handle, what is E-levy? And I asked the same thing, what is the street levy? Is it a tax on capital? Because yes, as they are saying, it's not all Momo transactions which is consumption. If I send money, if I'm in Accra and I send money to pay for workers on my farm, for workers, in my shop or whatever, right? I'm not consuming. I'm paying wages. I'm encouraging business transactions. So it's not consumption. And what VAT sought to do, was to say that, wait a minute, VAT is a consumption tax. And so let us deduct, any tax that is paid on business inputs, any tax that's paid on capital. So for example, if you Senna goes today not to buy a car, it's different from Radio Gold going to buy a car. If you Senna goes to buy a car or to buy a motorcycle or anything, you pay VAT. If Radio Gold goes to buy a car, they will also pay VAT. But Radio Gold as a business will be allowed to deduct the VAT they pay on the car from the advertisement and other fees that you earn, which you are charging to. And if you charge even that advert to a business, that business can deduct it because it's a tax on the business that they are not consumers. So ultimately, VAT sanitizes all these taxes on input, on capital, on everything, and says you have a right to deduct them. So that by the time the goods go to the consumer, it would have been taken off. Otherwise, the consumer is going to pay 17.5% on the cost plus the taxes that they enacted. So we are saying the same thing. Remember, I was careful to make a distinction. I wasn't in opposition to what Bryce said at all. And let me reiterate that, right? Both as a professional, I agree and I've been writing, so I'm not backtracking on anything that I've said. No. I was only also making a distinction between the process and saying that the consultation is necessary, yes, but they can go to Parliament without that consultation, and that is due process. That is part of the process. There's a bit of, I don't think that there is. Sorry, I must be careful here. I think that the PFMA we did ask for consultations, yes, but how wide was that consultations done? Is a question that was being raised. So I was trying to make a distinction between, the obnoxious nature of the levy, right, and the process. And by the way, did you know that before the VAT was introduced, the Internal Revenue Service was collecting taxes? These services that we are talking about were collecting these service taxes, and they were already replaced by the VAT, which is why one of the controversial issues was what was an appropriate rate, for the VAT at the time. Because VAT was not an entirely new tax. There were taxes on goods called the sales tax, taxes on services. The first one was being collected by Customs Department at the time, or the Customs SEPs, as we call them at the time. And the second one was being collected by the Internal Revenue Service on a narrow base. Yes. And all of these were put together, right, to introduce the VAT. So what are we talking about? What is the preaching that we are hearing today? Those who oppose that and now reintroducing it, then where is the clarity in what was done in the past, right? The taxes that were consolidated, right, were put as part of the VAT and enacted so that businesses can get their input tax credit, are now being reintroduced again, right, without that credit, which is a superior approach. That's the question.
But also, as a tax person, do the assumptions sound tidy enough for you that we are projecting that we are planning to make 6.9 billion Ghana cedis from Momo alone this year?
This is why we must not rush the debate, right? I have said, for example, that the total revenue, when you are increasing revenue, assuming that you meet the 70 billion you say you want to collect in 2021, right? And you say you want to increase it to 100 billion. I've already said that it's ambitious. If you see the document that's going around, because it's half of the revenue that you are collecting. You are struggling to collect 70 billion. And then you say in 2022, you want to collect, 100 billion. So I've raised some of these questions. But the point I'm making is that this is why this whole scenario, should not rush Parliament, because the question you are asking is exactly what the Finance Committee will ask. What data did you collect? What data did you collect from MTN, from Vodafone and the rest where these transactions originate, right? And how much of it, and I would have asked how much of it, is paid by businesses, which will be passed on to consumers, and how much of it is paid directly to the consumer. And are you sure that when the Momo is sent to the consumer, it is not, a wife sending money for school fees? So is it what? A charge on school fees? Right? So those are the questions which, and were all these considered, were all these to be exempted or what? And if business has to be given the credit, then why are you not, is it because you need the money that you are not using the VAT to do it? Right? So yes, so that they can get their input tax credit. So Senator, you raised a very important point, but in order that it must be debated, carefully, and even I do not have all because extensive work is done by GRA to show whether this can be, and our Finance Committee, GRA will be there with the minister to answer some of these technical questions that you are raising. And that's why the process in Parliament is also very important, and it should not be rushed on account of the stalemate that we are going through, with the E-levy.